Hello everyone, and welcome to Unit 6 of MBA 6103, Managing Innovation. This week we'll move forward in our Innovation Strategy Planning Guide when we start looking at implementation of projects and new ventures, but we'll also focus on disruptive innovation. And so we'll be talking about implementation with a focus on disruption. So if we look back to the innovation strategy planning chart, we know that we've already discussed the searching component, the search component. We've already looked through methods and strategies for finding opportunities for innovation. We've talked about how to search out those opportunities, scan the internal environment, the external environment, and find find ways for your organization to be innovative and come up with new ideas and really kind of vet those ideas and figure out which ones are more appropriately aligned with our organizational strategy and what we're trying to accomplish. We've moved forward to the next box there in the previous unit when we discussed how do we select the appropriate innovative project or idea. How do we kind of narrow that down and again vet that out and decide which one is going to be correct for our organization. So now we're moving on to the third box, kind of the third quadrant there of our summary innovation strategy, and that is to implement. How are we going to implement? How are we going to make this project happen? How do we structure for growth? How do we structure for success with regard to this new project, new venture, new service or product, whatever it is that we're developing or creating as part of our innovative strategy? How do we arrange our organization in a way that sets us up for success rather than sets this project up for failure? That's what we want to avoid. We don't want to set this innovation project, we don't want to set it up for failure. We want it to be successful. And so how do we structure in a way that allows it to do that? So we're going to focus this week. This week we're going to talk about creating new products and services, but we're going to focus those products and services on disruption. We've already discussed in the past, there are many ways we can kind of facilitate innovation. We can facilitate innovation either through sustaining type of innovations, those that continue to kind of perpetuate our existing business model, and those that continue to sustain existing products and services within our organization. So those incremental innovations, those kind of sustaining innovations, are those that, again, support our existing business model. They support our existing products and services, and they allow us to kind of extend that life cycle for those products and services, either indefinitely or a little bit longer or whatever, but they're just sustaining our existing way of doing business. So when we talk this week about creating new products and new services, we're going to focus on disruption. We're going to focus on those products and services that are disruptive to the market, that basically come in and create new market space that radically change the way either our organization or our competitors or both change the way we do business, and have a potential to, again, disrupt or completely upset the existing business environment in which we operate or our competitors operate. So when we talk about these disruptive or radical innovations, we're going to be looking at those through kind of the lens of how do we create those, how do we implement these innovative strategies in a way that allow us to create those products and services that are disruptive. And so we can kind of even subcategorize, we can kind of break down the new products and services, the methods for creating these new products and services into kind of two categories. We can either create a product or service that aligns, that is in alignment with our existing strategy and our existing core competencies of the organization. So in other words, when we're looking at these disruptive innovations, it is completely possible to go out there and create a new product or a new service that aligns with our existing strategy and our existing core competencies. In other words, the things that we're already good at. We can create a new product or service that aligns with the things that we already do and the things that we're already good at. Kind of a revolutionary new washer or dryer, a new type of microwave or a new type of home appliance. If we're in the home appliance business, and I'll use the example of GE here in a moment, but if we're in the home appliance business, we come up with a new kind of revolutionary type of product that already aligns with our existing business strategy and our existing core competencies, the things that we're already good at. Intel is a great example of this. Intel is constantly coming up with, in fact, they're supposed to roll out a new processor, the Haswell version, or I think that's kind of the code name is Haswell. Whenever they were working on the existing family of processors, the Core i5s and the i7s and all those are the Sandy Bridge processors, and now they're working on an entirely new family of processors called the Haswell processors. And so they're constantly creating new products that can, again, disrupt the market for their existing ones, because when they roll out a new family of computer chips or microprocessors, the ones that they're currently selling in existing machines obviously become obsolete and they go away. So we can create. Another example is the new Xbox. The new Xbox, obviously, and their PlayStation 4. It's a new product that will render the previous one obviously obsolete, and they'll replace it and move on. So it is entirely possible to come up with a new product or a new service that is in alignment with our existing strategy and what we do well. When Microsoft and Xbox came out with the Kinect device, kind of the 3D motion tracking device, it was a revolutionary, a disruptive innovation that aligned with their existing strategy in terms of video game play and that kind of thing. So it's entirely possible to come up with a product or service that aligns with our existing strategy and takes advantage of our existing core competencies. And then on the next slide, I'll talk about what if we want to come up with a product or service that does not align with those. But for this slide, we'll stick with those strategies or those products and services that do align with our existing strategy and our existing core competencies. Well, the process for doing that is standardized, very similar. We stuff that we've kind of already talked about. We know that we obviously put together a dedicated development team. When we're looking at developing a new product or services, we need a dedicated development team whose job is to focus on this new disruptive product or service. Now we can structure those teams in one of four different ways. We can have a functional structure, one of two product management structures, lightweight versus heavyweight, or we can have just dedicated project execution teams. But either way, whichever, in some structures, some of the team structures are more appropriate than others. But whatever we do, we know we've got to have a dedicated product or project development team. And then we just kind of move through the steps. we develop the concept. We generate the concept. We figure out what the concept design that we're going with is. We select the project, develop the product, and we take it to out there to the market. It's the full commercialization. Very similar to what you would see if concept cars. Concept cars are a great example of this in action. Car manufacturers, GM, Ford, Chrysler, they go through this process step by step by step, very routinely. And you see it in concept cars. Many concept cars make it to this step right here, this concept generation step, and then don't make it past project selection. And so you'll see the you'll see many, again, of the large auto manufacturers go through these 5 steps over and over again. They'll have a dedicated product or project development team. They'll work on, say, the next hybrid or electric car concept, and so you'll have a team that's dedicated to that. Now remember, for auto manufacturers, if they're working on new concept cars, you're talking about a product or service that aligns or that is in alignment with their existing strategy or core competencies. They're in the car business already. They're just trying to develop a new and hopefully disruptive automobile. So they have a dedicated team. They come up with a concept, hence the term concept car. They might have some 3D mock-ups of it. They might do the full scale concept, make one production version of it. And if the project gets selected for full development, then they'll develop it and they'll take it to market for full commercialization of the product, of this new vehicle. So these are the steps that we go through if we're trying to put it together or trying to come up with a product or service that aligns with our existing strategy or core competency. So what happens if we've gone through the innovative strategy process, we've searched out opportunities, and what if those opportunities were outside of our existing strategy or core competencies, and we selected a innovative project that is outside of our existing strategy or core competency? That gets a little more complicated, because now we start looking at, well, here it's pretty simple. If we have a product or service that aligns with our existing strategy and what we already do, we're already in the car business, we're just developing new services for our vehicles, new products, new features for vehicles. We're coming up with new concept cars that hopefully are innovative. If we're Intel, we're already in the computer chip business. I mean, we're already making microprocessors, and we're just trying to develop new and disruptive ones that are more powerful, faster, cheaper, able to accomplish more. And so we go through this process over and over again. If we've looked at our innovation strategy and we've located opportunities outside of our existing strategy and we've selected those, then what do we do? Because now we're talking about trying to get into either an industry or develop a product or service that we are not familiar with. Now we're talking about trying to develop something that is outside of our core competency, something that is not what we do really, really well. So we start looking at new ventures. And when we say new ventures, we're basically talking about almost as though they're startups. And I've used the term in this class before, entrepreneurial ventures versus entrepreneurial ventures. And we treat those two terms, they're very similar. It's just that entrepreneurial ventures, I mean, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you go start your own business, you raise money for a startup, and you have an idea, and you get buy-in from people, and they invest in your idea, and you start your own business, and you grow it, and you're kind of on your own. Entrepreneurial ventures are very similar. It's just that they take place within the organization, and you might have within your organization, you might have some creative folks with really good ideas, but what they're wanting to do is an internal venture which is not within the scope of what your organization, your company currently does. It's not part of your organization's existing strategy or your organization's existing core competencies. And so what we end up doing is we end up putting together some type of internal venture or some type of entrepreneurship initiative. So we can structure these projects to develop a new product or service that is outside of our existing core competency. In other words, something that we don't do really well, we don't know how to do. We can either put together a venture team internal to the organization, go find the right people that know how to do that, hire them, or bring them from within. They have these ideas, and we fund it and build it internally. We can look for an external venture, an external partnership, or maybe some type of alliance with an organization that already does this and does it well, and partner with them. Or we can go for an entirely new venture, a spin-off or spin-out, and have a separate company, a separate organization that is co-owned by our organization, or that is, maybe is a subsidiary of our organization that is responsible for going out and developing this thing. The example that comes to mind is, obviously we talk about Amazon quite a bit, but I'm going to talk about Amazon again. Amazon obviously got into the business of selling books. I mean, Amazon was originally just an online book retailer. That's what they did. That was their business model. And they had warehouses full of books. And over time that changed. They became more of a retailer, and now they're obviously the largest online retailer for pretty much everything, not just books. But when you have Amazon looking at how can we create a new product or service that is disruptive, that is a product or service that is possibly outside of our existing strategy and core competencies, yet might support our business model. Well, they came up with, obviously, the concept, the idea of the Kindle. And now, obviously, you have many different versions of the Kindle Fire, and that kind of thing. But see, Amazon was not a hardware, software development company. They weren't in the business of creating technology devices. They were in the retail business. Amazon was in the business of retail, selling things online. That was their core competency. So if Amazon was to pursue a disruptive innovation that was outside of its existing strategy and core competency, which we know its strategy is retail, we know its core competency is retail, it would have to have kind of pursued one of these venture structures, either an internal venture, external venture, new venture, spin-off, to develop this. Well, if you know the history of the Kindle and their Lab 126, which was basically a startup kind of R&D division for them, which was obviously internal, kind of an entrepreneurship type of structure for Amazon. They came up with the concepts, and then obviously then they had to develop some type of external partnerships for manufacturing, because they obviously don't build those things themselves. So the result was obviously the first Kindle, and then on to what we have now with the Kindle Fire and the other devices that Amazon has. But what you're talking about is you're talking about a disruptive innovation, a piece of technology, a product that is different and outside of their existing strategy. However, it fully supports what Amazon does, because people can purchase books and obviously buy things and whatever from Amazon from their device. So again, there's really those two ways. I mean, we can structure our development, the development of our product or service in a way, if it aligns with our existing strategy, we can structure it in a kind of a standardized process for development. Or if it's a product or service that is outside of our existing strategy, something different, we can structure it through a type of venture to grow it and create it that way. And again, there are many similarities, many parallels between what we see with entrepreneurship, maybe an internal venture, to what we would do with entrepreneurial ventures, outside ventures, in terms of fundraising and structure and autonomy and independence and that kind of thing. So why would we want to pursue a new venture? Why do we, within our organization, why would we be interested in focusing on a new venture rather than just a whole bunch of internal innovations, sustaining innovations, or team projects that continue to roll out these new things that we already do? Well, obviously the book gives a whole bunch of examples, but we're kind of talking about the same things. I mean, obviously we want to grow, so a new venture could help us grow. I mean, if we come up with if we develop a new product or new service that is outside of our existing business model and it's successful, then we're obviously going to grow. Perhaps a new venture will help us more effectively use resources that we already have. Maybe we do have some talent, maybe we have some capital, some cash, maybe we have some facilities and some other resources that we could more effectively use if we begin to pursue some other ventures. New ventures might help us leverage our supply chain or value chain relationships. Again, going back to the example of Amazon, great example here, because Amazon, with their success in the Kindle Fire, or with their success in the Kindle product originally, they were able to leverage many of their value chain relationships that they already had. When we think of the value chain, we think of all of the different places along an organization's chain, all the way from suppliers to come up to customers that add value to the organization. Well, Amazon already had relationships with suppliers, publishers of books, because they were buying these books and putting them in a warehouse and then reselling them to customers. Amazon already had customers that were buying books from them because that was their business model. Amazon was in the book retail business, so it was buying a whole bunch of books from publishers and then reselling those books to customers. Well, the original Kindle e-reader allowed Amazon to leverage those relationships. All of a sudden, now you have a device in which your customers can purchase an ebook instantly, and they're already buying from you anyway, so they're comfortable with the relationship. You already have relationships with the publishers, so you can work out deals to get ebook versions for your customers at a cheaper rate. So it made it possible for Amazon to leverage those relationships in a way that they weren't going to be able to otherwise. A new venture also helps us prepare for, divestiture. I mean, if we want to divest a particular part of our organization, maybe we've got a division or a part of our organization dedicated to a certain technology or a certain product that we would like to sell or divest, get rid of, we could. A new venture helps us leverage the ambitions of our personnel. So many times we see these new products or services come about because of ambitions of management or ambitions of some of our engineers or people that work for us. They're ambitious, they have ideas, they're creative, they want to pursue those. So as an organization, we're faced with, well, either we find a way, a new venture or something like that, we find a way to let them pursue those ambitions internally to our organization, where our organization benefits from it. And we kind of give them some of the resources, and we give them support to let them kind of grow and foster these new ideas. And hopefully they turn into a viable product or service for our organization. Or we stand the chance of those talented people leaving our company and either going someplace that will give them the support to do that, or they go out and do it on their own. A new venture allows us to leverage economies of scale. Again, there might be things in our organization that we're already good at. We might already be good at certain development components. We take advantage of those because we can use those with this new product or service. New ventures might help us kind of smooth out cyclical products or markets. If we're in a business that is cyclical, perhaps a new venture in a different area, in something outside of what we currently do and do well, might help kind of smooth out those ups and downs, those cycles, those business cycles. Obviously, diversification, having products and services in different industries and different markets, serving different markets, creates a more stable environment for our organization. And a new venture allows us to develop new competencies rather than simply sticking with one thing only. Perhaps we're able to develop new competencies. And a great example of this is GE, General Electric. Most people, when you say GE and you think of General Electric, they think of kitchen appliances, or washers, dryers, refrigerators, microwaves, ovens, those types of things. We think of home appliances. But in fact, GE is a conglomerate that has successfully over the years kind of used this new venture strategy to diversify outside of home appliances. In fact, GE is obviously one of the largest companies in the world, but they are so diversified. They build airplane engines. They are in the solar and wind power business, the energy business basically, clean energy. They obviously are in home appliances, but all kinds of different manufacturing, engineering. I mean, they have GE more than ever. More than a retailer or manufacturer, GE is more of a holdings corporation than anything else. They have so many subsidiaries and ventures in which they are the primary kind of funder or the capital partner. In fact, GE's really become, if we look at what GE is, a holding company and more of a venture capital firm than just about anything else because of their range of holdings and what they own. So, what GE, quote, does as a business has really changed significantly in the last, 25, 30 years to where they are more of a holdings company because they are so diversified and they've pursued all these new ventures and they have a significant range of holdings compared to what they used to do, many, many years ago and simply built home appliances. So if we're going to structure for a venture, if we've decided that a new venture is appropriate for us to implement our innovation strategy, we can do so, by any number of ways. Direct integration, having that venture directly integrated within the organization. Now, you'll notice that out of all of these potential strategies here, these 8 strategies, or 8 structures, I guess you would say, as we move down this line, you'll notice that we start with direct integration, which direct integration is, I don't want to say the most controlled, but that's really kind of what it is. It's the least autonomous. It gives the venture the least amount of independence, but it gives the organization that is paying for or setting up this venture, it gives the organization the most control over the project, over the product, the service, the venture itself. So if you're setting up a venture that is directly integrated into the business, then obviously the organization itself has the most control over it. However, on the flip side of that, the venture, the new startup, has less independence and less autonomy. So when we're trying to decide what's the appropriate way to structure this new venture, we've got to weigh how much control do we want the sponsoring or the funding organization to have, how much independence and autonomy do we want the venture to have. It's more of a question of risk management. How do we want to manage the risk of this new venture? And so as we move down the line, you'll notice we start here with direct integration, meaning, okay, it's a new venture, but it's basically directly integrated within the company. And even though they are over here pursuing this new product or service, trying to develop it and make it successful, they're still part of our organization, and they're still controlled by our organization, and they have a little bit less autonomy and independence. Whereas we get down here to a complete spin-off, it being they operate, they're not controlled at all by our organization. I mean, they operate independently, they're autonomous, they're an entirely separate company, and they're out there doing their own. They're either going to stand or fall on their own. And so any of these other structures will fall within those two extremes. So we can have direct integration, we can have integrated business teams, we can have a new venture department, which again, as we're moving down this line, we're increasing the level of autonomy and power and control that the venture has, and we're simultaneously decreasing the amount of control and autonomy or the amount of control that the organization responsible for the venture has. So we can have it as a division or integrated business teams within the company. We can set up an entirely new department within in the organization, an entirely new division within the organization. We can go so far as to have a special business unit or an independent business unit, whereas they operate as an independent business, but there may be a subsidiary of our organization, separate company, but still wholly owned and controlled by our organization. Or we can get down here and have it create a nurtured divestment, where we've divested that organization, it's operating on its own, or completely spin it off into its own company, its own brand that operates independently of the existing organization. Great example of how this works is PepsiCo and Yum Brands. Now, if you're familiar with PepsiCo, not just Pepsi, the soft drink. PepsiCo is the parent company of a lot of brands. If you go to PepsiCo's website, you can see here the brands that PepsiCo owns. And so PepsiCo owns, obviously, Pepsi, which we think of the soft drink, which not just Pepsi Cola, but all of the other drinks that go into Pepsi, that comprise the Pepsi brand. Mountain Dew, Sierra Mist, Amp energy drink, and a few others as well. PepsiCo also is the parent company of Frito-Lay, Doritos, Tostitos, and all of the different brands that go in that are owned by Frito-Lay. Tropicana, Quaker, and Gatorade. So PepsiCo is the parent company of all these different subsidiaries. You know, they own all these brands: Pepsi, Frito-Lay, Tropicana, Quaker, and Gatorade. And they keep those brands as either independent business units. More than likely, they probably operate independently, and they're independent business units. They haven't completely spun them off into their own company yet. But each of these brands, these business units, perhaps operates independently. Now, really, you can get an idea of their structure, about how they operate, by looking at kind of their structure. They have what they call global business units, which PepsiCo Americas Beverages, which is comprised of these brands: Mountain Dew, Diet Pepsi, Gatorade, Tropicana. And so you can see that this particular structure is pretty much an independent business unit. They're kind of set up as business units here. We'll see the same thing with PepsiCo Americas Foods, which has Frito-Lay, Quaker, and a few others down here. So PepsiCo is a very interesting way of kind of demonstrating how we structure for a new venture. And going a step further, Yum Brands now it is an entirely separate entity. PepsiCo used to have as a part of their independent business units a couple of extra brands under their foods, under PepsiCo Foods: KFC, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, A&W, Long John Silver's. And there's a reason why those fast food restaurants only serve Pepsi, because they used to be independent business units of PepsiCo. Kentucky Fried Chicken, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, A&W, and then Long John Silver's. They used to be part of PepsiCo. In other words, they were business units owned by PepsiCo. And so you can only buy Pepsi at those places. Well, KFC, Pizza Hut, and Taco Bell they were operating independently, and they grew to the point where it made more sense for PepsiCo, the parent company, to no longer operate the fast food division as an independent business unit, because you had all these fast food restaurants, again, KFC, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, and a few others, operating as independent business units underneath PepsiCo, and they grew to the point where it no longer made sense for them to operate as independent business units under Pepsi. Instead, it made more sense for them to operate as an entirely different organization. So what PepsiCo did is they put those brands, business units, what used to be PepsiCo's fast food division, instead of their beverage division, which was Pepsi, and their foods division, which is Quaker and Frito-Lay, they had a fast food division, which was KFC, Pizza Hut, and Taco Bell. And so they put those brands underneath their fast food division, and they spun their fast food division off, did a complete spin-off, and spun it off as Yum Brands, which Yum Brands now operates as an entirely independent organization, separate managers, executives, board members, those folks, and operates as a fast food, independent fast food organization. And so, PepsiCo came in and did a complete spinoff, and now you have two independent organizations. You have PepsiCo, which still has independent business units, still has Pepsi and Gatorade and Tropicana and Quaker all within that entity, but you also have Yum Brands, which is separate. And so that's really a good example of, how do we structure for a venture, because we want it to grow, and if it can grow to the point we eventually do a complete spinoff and that organization operates independently and with, again, its own revenue streams and its own management structure and that kind of thing, then that works. The last thing I want to talk about is what we commonly refer to as value added. We know that when we're trying to think about developing new products or services, and we're trying to be disruptive, one of the things that often happens with products is products become commoditized. In other words, there are a whole lot of products out there that are very similar or the same as what we offer. And so commoditization basically happens when our core product, when what we're trying to offer is homogeneous. It's the same as what everybody else is. There's not much differentiation between what we offer and what our competitors offer. And this leads to price wars, because if we can't compete on features any longer, if we're not able to offer new latest greatest technology features, if the products that we're offering are very similar or the same as the products that our competitors are offering, it leads to price wars. And it leads to price wars because there's an abundance of competing products. And you see this in technology, kind of throughout the life cycle of technology. I mean, pretty soon everybody's selling Blu-ray players and they're all the same. There's not much differentiating between them, and so all of a sudden the prices of Blu-ray players start decreasing rapidly. And what happens is our brand equity, there's a dissolution of brand equity. The value in our brand that we're trying to offer all of a sudden becomes less and less valuable, because the people can't differentiate between what we offer and what our competitor right next to us on the shelf offers. So as a tool for creating disruption and innovation, there are a few strategies that we can pursue. Obviously we can look at market segmentation, which is discussed in the reading this week, trying to segment those markets. We can also look at customization, and we can look at bundling. Those are kind of the three common strategies for disruption, or for value added. So if we're trying to add value, and we're trying to create innovation and disruption through adding value, and we look at segmenting first. Well, we know we've talked about segmenting already, and chances are that if we're considering value-added strategies, chances are we've probably already segmented the market as much as we can. But we want to go back and review that anyway, and we want to look at, okay, can we segment the market even further? Can we kind of break the market apart based upon common buying or common usage factors? In other words, are there different groups buying our products for slightly different things, or are they using our product in slightly different ways, and we can build value into the product that way? That's one way to add value. Another way is through customization. Can we allow our customers to customize the product or service, or can we allow them to tailor the product or service to meet their needs at an individual level? And this is important, because if we allow our customers to start customizing, start making unique requests or changes to the product at an individual level, then we can start enhancing differentiation at the individual level. Then there's no, you can't segment the market any further than the individual. And by allowing customers the opportunity to customize, then we're differentiating at the individual level. And that helps obviously revive brand equity, it helps create loyalty, and obviously dependency. I mean, then all of a sudden our customers are depending upon us because the product or service that they're using is so customized that they cannot get that anywhere else. And the last value-added strategy here is bundling. You know, do we have the opportunity to combine products or services into a single offer? Are we able to combine multiple things that our customers are doing into one single offer? Because that obviously adds perceived value. And so again, great examples of these three strategies here, both Amazon and Netflix. Amazon through what they're doing now with their Prime membership, they're bundling. If you are an Amazon Prime customer, you get, obviously there's a small fee for it. I think it's $50 or $60 or $70 a year, but you get free 2-day shipping on everything you buy from Amazon. You get streaming movies through their Prime video feature, and a few extra perks. So now there's combining related or non-related services into a single offer. Netflix, in terms of their pricing options, when Netflix really started disrupting the industry, they gave customers the chance to individualize or customize their service. If you only want DVDs by mail, I think it was $8. If you want DVDs plus streaming, it was $12. Or if you want 2 DVDs a month, it was $16. And you could customize your level of service and control your pricing. So, and ultimately, when you look at these value-added strategies as ways to help create new products or services, and you build that into the implementation, you build that into the development of new products and services, you're more likely to create something that is disruptive. And that's kind of the goal of this unit, is to really look at those disruptive those strategies for creating those disruptive products and services.